Welcome to Freaking Paranormal.
Welcome to it. The shit show.
Hi, Jess.
Hi.
Oh, come on. We have lots of fun. It's just
In the
our
form of
remote
like
connections
corporal
are a bit of a
punishment.
challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
If you like self-flagellation via electronics, this is the place to be.
I have a whining dog behind me, one barking out in the yard in the dark, asking for the coyotes to get him, and a cat sitting next to me. So I'm just waiting for something to fall over.
It might be you.
Yeah, might be a UFO.
Might be UFO. So,
I learned
this?
I learned a factoid, Jessica,
Did you?
about there's very many different kinds of UFOs.
Oh, is that so? Do you want to
Would you like
educate
to
our listeners?
hear what they are? Are you even mildly interested?
What? Am I interested?
She says no.
I will just, since we have this space-time continuum issue, it's like I heard half the question. So am I mildly
I thought they
interested?
might
Apparently.
want to
That's
know
the way it looks.
how many different kinds there are, because I didn't even know what a couple of these were. There's a black triangle. I think flying saucer,
Yeah.
Foo Fighter,
Oh, okay. I think that's a band.
ghost rockets,
Also a band.
Foo Fighters.
Is a band.
And the ghost rockets are too?
No, well, Foo Fighters is, but I was being
didn't
funny.
know that.
Yeah. Dave Grohl,
Yeah.
Foo Fighters.
Oh, yeah, but ghost rockets, they're mainly seen in Sweden,
Interesting.
and the word for it is spookrocketer, which I think is cool. Spookrocketer. And
Spookrocketer.
there's green fireballs, and that's what happens to me after I eat gluten, and mystery airship.
Mystery airship. Okay.
So, yeah, those are the types of UFOs that may or may not be abducting human beings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's the subject of tonight's episode.
Well, good thing I did some research on that.
Alien abductions.
Is it? Is that what we did?
Yes, that's what I did.
I just like, I did, like stuff that has things about it. That's scary.
Does it involve travel?
Sometimes.
Like
It's called
how far?
it's called the security checkpoint.
A security checkpoint?
It's very scary.
Okay. Where's that?
In the airport.
Oh,
I'm being facetious.
yeah.
Yeah. Because, So was that your first article of discussion?
No.
No.
I was going to just open it up for
Questions?
stories about alien
Questions.
abductions with my nice segue, but somehow my segue got kind of
Segue. Well,
All right, then.
considering we're on the topic of alien abductions, have you ever experienced an abduction?
I've experienced seduction, but not abduction.
Seduction? You could figure out what that is.
Alien subduction. I also have that going on in my body right now.
Brain subduction.
What was your first alien
Well,
abduction story?
Well, I guess you went first last time, so I could start, I suppose. It was kind of hard to wade through all the information that's out there because there's a lot of just articles, I guess, positing on why there's so many abductions, or people have that as their story, and especially now since UFO documents and stuff have been released, it's like there's a lot more psychological evaluation
Data.
going on about it. Yeah. Well, data plus everyone has an opinion about something, so it's not necessarily a story. So my first story is actually harkening back to the olden days of the United States. So the first recorded sighting is in 1639 and it
Wow.
takes place in New England. And this particular website that I found it was, based in New England, all of the various like sightings and encounters that had taken place in the area. So this incident was a secondhand account.
A
That was
second-hand account?
something like that. Yeah. For a direct deposit, direct dog deposit. I don't know, something in there. Anyway, it was documented by the Massachusetts Bay Colony, the governor, John Winthrop. So this was from a diary entry from March 1st of 1639. And it reads, quote, "A sober, discreet man named James Everell was rowing a boat up the muddy river at night when he saw a great light in the sky, and that when it stood still, it flamed up and was about 3 yards square. When it ran, it was contracted into the figure of a swine. It ran as swift as an arrow towards Charlestown, and so up and down about 2 or 3 hours. By the time the lights moved away, Everell and his boatmates had been delivered 1 mile upstream, although they had no recollection how."
Weird is that?
Yeah.
That is, I've never heard of that in those days.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
and that's one of the things about these abductions. They seem to lose track of time.
Yeah.
They somehow get sucked in another dimension.
Well, or they're actually abducted, so they're gone from their own sense of time.
Yeah, like being frozen or something. You just don't know.
Or like
how long
someone takes you away from somewhere and then they bring you back. Obviously, time is going to pass where you are.
Yeah.
But if they go off,
especially
into space or wherever, or who knows how long their experiments take.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good story.
So,
but the swine thing, kind of reminded me of that river monster.
But if you think about the shape of a swine, a pig is kind of the same shape as a cigar, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of long and somewhat cylindrical. So stands to reason that well, if you think about it, it's just sort of like tapered. It's swine-like, It's not like they have a lot of stuff to draw upon in 1639.
Yeah, and did they even have cigars back then? I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
I don't know.
So
they were swine-shaped crafts instead of cigar-shaped.
Well, when it ran, when it moved, and it's just like you could dissect the language there. But
they could have said sausage.
They could have. Maybe that's what they meant by swine.
Maybe there's a translation error there.
From English to English?
Who knows? So
also another little blurb within this website is the first major report of an alien abduction. And this gained, like national publicity. This is Barney and Betty Hill. And this took place in 1961. So you probably have some recollection of this, right? Because you would have been...
It's just from what I've been reading lately on the subject.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So
I didn't read it because I wanted to be surprised, but their names kept popping up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Barney Hill, Betty Hill. And, their story was adapted into a book and into a TV movie as well. So it was... the book was called The Interrupted Journey by a journalist, John G. Fuller, and that came out in 1966. And then there was a TV movie, The UFO Incident, that came out in 1975. And I think I read somewhere else that James Earl Jones played Barney Hill.
Oh, okay.
And I forgot who that actress was. The story? But so what happened here was took place in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, or Portsmouth probably. And it was September 19th in 1961 near Franconia Notch, wherever that is. So this is in the evening time. They were driving home. It was about 10:30 p.m., so obviously dark out. And they saw a bright light in the sky, and they were thinking that it was, shooting star. But then it changed direction and started moving upward. So obviously, shooting stars don't
that
change
weird
direction.
movement.
Yeah. For whatever reason, they had binoculars in the car. So they pulled over to the side of the road and, wanted to get a closer look at what it was that they were seeing. And they described the craft as being unusually shaped and having multicolored lights. And as it got closer, they could see humanoid shapes in black uniforms through the windows in this craft. And they estimated it was about 40 feet long. They didn't really say, I guess, what sort of a shape. It was just an unusual shape. So go figure. Maybe it was shaped like a pig. So as, once they saw that, got them, more detail, they got back in their car and they tried to drive away as fast as they could, but the craft followed them. And shortly thereafter, they heard strange noises like electronic clicks and like a buzzing sound, and they experienced a tingling sensation. So, standard evening for you. And then they blacked out.
And same with me.
Same with you, And then once they came back to back into consciousness, they discovered that they were 35 miles further south than where they started, with, again, no recollection of how they got there.
But they were still in their car.
They were still in their car, yeah, which is bizarre.
Interesting.
So years later, they both went under hypnosis, as is common for people that have claimed to be abducted by aliens. And they each, during these sessions, recalled being, taken aboard some craft, and that they were separated and then examined.
Prodded.
Poked and prodded. And all I could think about, and I don't know if you've seen it, you probably have, all I could think about during the reading about these various abductions is the Saturday Night Live skit. Have you seen that one where there's the 3 different people that have been abducted by aliens, and 2 out of the 3 have had these otherworldly, amazing experiences, and the other one is treated, terribly. And it's just, you haven't seen it.
No, haven't seen it.
No, I'll have to find a clip and send it to you.
Okay.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
So what happened with Benny and Billy, Bob, Benny, what was his name?
Betty, a guy and a girl. They were husband and wife.
Yeah.
Barney and Betty. Right?
So they just ended up in their car.
Wait, wasn't Barney and Betty, weren't those the Flintstones?
Yeah, that's right. Rubble. Barney and Betty Rubble.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
They're just, I didn't dig deeper.
Oh, okay.
I guess they got sent back in time into the prehistoric era.
Maybe. It's funny how these abductions and sightings seem to cluster around the 1950s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
But then I read a person that was, a doubter, and they said, sure, that's because after cell phones were invented, you can't just make up a story anymore,
Well, even once these stories got published, it's that became this is what I was reading elsewhere. It's that then became the blueprint for any future abduction stories. They all sort of adhere to similar experiences, recalling similar people or humanoids or aliens, whatever.
Similar occurrences.
And,
And some,
you don't know what you've absorbed subconsciously. Like some relate it to just being these people are, more predisposed to like mental health issues or having, paranoid thinking or what else? Any number of those things, or they just want to feel special.
yeah. Or they just are reliving a surgical procedure, That's what I read. Some scientists say, it's that false memory you have because you're under anesthesia and you have these visuals of people with weird masks and big eyes and hovering over you, and your brain is trying to make sense of it and doesn't recall things exactly right.
Yeah, but how often are there people claiming to be abducted that have had those sorts of have had surgery? Not everyone has surgery.
That's a good question, actually.
Sure, that makes sense, but it's like
touched upon. Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's an easy way to just
statistic was there.
Dismiss things. Well, do you have a story?
Yes, I'm taking our listeners and viewers back down to Brazil.
Where?
Brazil.
Okay.
Kind of like my bra, really down,
For really south and
down
huge
south.
And moist.
Yeah. Well, this guy, his
A
name
river
was...
runs through
it. You're past it. This guy's name was Antonio Vilas Boas. B-O-A-S.
What?
B-O-A-S. Boas?
Boaz.
Yeah.
Boaz.
And he was a young man, and he eventually became a lawyer.
Okay.
But at the time of his abduction, he was farming.
Okay. How old was he?
He farmed at night, like all people do. Let's see. How old was he? I think he was around in his 20s. He was young.
Working on that.
And he
college.
was farming at night because, he wasn't in college yet. Because it was so hot there. So he was riding his tractor around doing something, and he saw the proverbial ship hovering in his field, and it scared him. It just really frightened him. And so he thought, I'll just drive away on my tractor. Well, like it always happens with these abductions, the machine stopped working. So his tractor just died in the field. So then he took off Yeah. Then he took off running, but they caught up with him and they took him to the spaceship. Yeah. But this is the weird thing. Okay. He's in this room, and he sees humanoids, and they take him into this other room, and he's standing there, and all of a sudden this like noxious gas comes in, and he's not feeling very well. But then in walks this female humanoid, and she had white hair, blue cat-like eyes, and red pubic hair and red underarm hair. And he said, I was unusually sexually attracted to her.
Maybe it was the noxious gas.
To myself, yeah, noxious gas, scared out of my mind. Yeah, let's have sex. And so they did. And after they consummated their relationship, after they copulated, she stood up and she rubbed her belly, and then she pointed to the sky, and he understood that to mean, I'm going to raise your child in the stars.
Okay.
Sounds also romantic.
Very.
Yeah. And so after that, they let him go. Let's see what happened. He was released, and he thought he had been in this ship for at most an hour. But when he got out and was released, it was like 4 hours later. He had completely lost track of time.
That's wild.
People thought, he had made up this whole story as a hoax, because right before his story came to light, there was a very similar story that had been publicized.
Mm-hmm.
But he actually started having medical issues like nausea
Mm-hmm.
and really bad headaches. And then he got like red nodules on his skin that turned to lesions and had like they oozed and stuff.
Sounds like AIDS.
And no, it was radiation poisoning.
Oh.
So explain that one. Yeah, the doctors that
I guess he had a
examined him
lot of
decided that's what it
X-rays,
was.
right, before his surgery.
What's yeah, that could be.
Yeah, just
That
lots
could
of
be.
X-rays.
So I think the moral of the story is watch out for those white-haired
Red-haired
women with the red pubes.
red pubes. I mean, it's just another case of the carpet not matching the curtains.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as the case may be.
it's a warning. Warning. Shots fired.
So that was in Brazil, and that was in 1957. And he ended up just going on living his life, getting married, and becoming a lawyer.
And did he suffer like long-term effects from that radiation exposure or poisoning or whatever?
It didn't say that, but maybe it eventually gets out of your system. Although it does cause leukemia, I think it did, but they didn't say.
Maybe it was just
Article I read.
fake cancer. God willing.
Welcome back to the second half of Freaking Paranormal and Alien Abductions.
Aliens. I love a good alien.
Yeah.
Well, let me take you to another country that you love.
That would be Saudi Arabia.
Really? Interesting. I never knew.
Egypt?
You were
Egypt?
closer with the S.
Sinai Peninsula?
Same place. Scotland. Anywho. It's called the Taylor Incident, the Livingston Incident, or the Dechmont, probably Dechmont, Dechmont, wouldn't you call that like Dechmont?
Dechmont. Yeah,
Dechmont Woods Encounter. And this took place around this time in 1979, November 9th to be precise.
Wow.
Yes, and
that's almost in your living memory.
Nearly. I was but a speck of dust. So, this happened to a gentleman named Robert Bob Taylor. So, Robert Taylor.
Robert Bob Taylor?
Well, he was known as Bob. Bob,
okay.
In quotes. So, Robert. So, he was a forestry guy. So, he spent a lot of time in the woods. And one of these days, he, parked on the side of the highway near the Dechmont Law, which I guess is the wood area, LAW.
LAW?
Mm-hmm, to walk through the forest path with his dog. So he's just, doing a trail that he normally does. And he reported seeing a flying dome that was made of dark metallic material with a rough sandpaper-like texture. And he described...
How does he know it was textured?
Well, it looked like he could see it. He could tell that it had like a rough texture, apparently. And he also noted that it had an outer rim made of small propellers, which is very specific. And it was approximately 21 feet in diameter and hovering fairly close to the ground. That seems kind of far. It says 530 yards from his truck. That's a distance. How could you tell it had texture from that far away?
Well, no, maybe he had walked that far from his truck.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny how most of these crafts are so small.
Yeah.
20 feet across. Was it 20 feet?
21 in diameter. Yeah.
Yeah, 21 in diameter.
Yeah, that's across.
No, that's not big.
No.
Yeah.
And he described there being a foul odor like burning brakes. And then he claimed to be dragged away by smaller spheres, which he described as being similar to sea mines, at which point he lost consciousness.
Well, say that again. He saw sea mines?
No, so
something that looked like sea mines?
yeah, he claimed that like he was dragged away by these smaller objects that came out of the larger ship, and he described them as small spheres. Then they were similar to like a sea mine, like what you see floating in the water, like those explosive mines,
with the
like a mace. They look like a mace.
The ball of a mace.
Yes. Where did I go? And at that point is when he lost consciousness. And where did I go? So
I only have one worry about this whole story.
What?
Did the dog get abducted too?
There was no mention of what happened to the dog. I know. I thought the same thing. I was like, did the dog?
Felt cheated.
Where did the dog go? Did he just stay there like a loyal puppy, like waiting for his master to return back from parts unknown? So once he regained consciousness, it didn't really mention like how much time had elapsed. He was unable to start his truck. So again, power failure. And he and I'm going to assume his dog walked back home. And he arrived back to his house. His wife was there waiting for him. He was muddy and disheveled. His, clothing was torn, and he had like scrapes and, abrasions to his chin and thighs. So it was just kind of odd. Yeah. And she, being worried and concerned for like his condition and just, I'm sure what he started describing, called the police and a doctor, and they checked him out. It wasn't anything serious. And then the policeman accompanied him back to the site of where this supposed encounter took place, and they found ladder-shaped marks in the ground, which is interesting.
Ladder shape.
Yeah, which I think of different. Like the feet of a ladder, and
not like it was lying down on the ground.
No, what I interpreted is like as if like a ladder had been propped up there. That's kind of what I thought.
Oh,
but who knows? Could be the other. Could be the ladder.
Very good. Well, it could be like treads,
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But then he would have said treads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they talk funny over there. So the policeman actually classified this as an assault. And so this UFO is like a criminal, which is kind of funny. And
it's hilarious.
It's just hilarious. But it's, it's funny. He's like, oh yeah, it's just common assault. That's what he assumed this to be. But
what happens all the time in Scotland?
Yeah.
Common assault.
There were, absolutely. But I guess this was, big news, and UFOologists actually erected a plaque in the area where it supposedly took place. But people tried to discredit and, debunk his claim of being abducted by saying that, there was some sort of water tower that could have been the saucer, and that Robert was known, he may have had like an epileptic fit, and that's what brought on, him getting injured. And what was the other thing they said? They just tried to chalk it up to like epilepsy, and I don't think he had been known to suffer epilepsy, but they were trying to debunk
I know they
it.
Always normalize it. Yep. They try to normalize it.
But it's not real. I know.
Well, my story that's coming up is not really an abduction. It's more like a supposed attack.
Oh.
And this happened in Australia.
Mars attacks?
And there was, it might have.
Okay.
Might have been a Mars bar too. We don't know.
I am ready.
So, this happened to a really cutie pie. He was 20 years old, and his name was Frederick Valentik. I think that's how you say his name. Fred, as we will call him
heretofore.
heretofore. And he sounded like he wasn't too bright,
I mean,
but he really wanted to be a pilot. So he had like 150 hours of flying time behind him and a class 4 instrument rating, which meant he could fly at night, but only if it was really
clear,
perfect visual. Yeah, it had to be really clear. And he tried to get into the Royal Australian Air Force 2 times, but he just couldn't pass the exams. And then he tried to become a commercial pilot, but he also failed those. So he sounds like
what was his problem?
He was either, maybe he wasn't very smart, or maybe he wasn't very dedicated.
Or maybe he had bad vision.
He said he wanted to. Yeah, maybe. So he decides to rent this Cessna, and it was a very small plane. I think it looks like it might seat 6 people, maybe 4, so it's really small.
Mm-hmm.
He rents it, and he says that he's going to go to Kings Island, which is south of Melbourne. 125 miles.
Melbourne.
But he told some people, yeah, I'm going to go pick up some friends. And then he told some other people, I'm going to pick up crayfish. And so it was kind of curious, what was he really doing?
Drugs.
And some people, well, that was my thought, but some people think he was looking for UFOs because this guy was a fanatic.
Oh, you mean crazy?
Yeah, he had, newspaper clippings of stories of UFOs and
multiple tinfoil hats.
He watched movies. Yeah, he had a lot of tinfoil hats and books. And his dad said, yeah, he was just crazy about UFOs. So I think the story that he just rented that plane to go hunt them at dusk was kind of like maybe the real story there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's out there flying around. Sun's going down. And he calls in to the Melbourne flight, the flight people. What are they called?
Flight deck.
The
flight, the air control.
Yeah, they call it the flight service, and this is about 7 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "There's an aircraft following me. Is there anybody in my airspace?" And they checked and said, "No, there's nobody." And he goes, "There is something here. They're flying like they went past me about 1,000 feet above me." And they said, "Well, how high are you?" And he said, 4,500 feet above the sea. And he goes, "They're coming back. I mean, I think they're toying with me." And the air traffic controller said that we don't see anything. There's nothing on the radar.
That's creepy.
And he goes, "It's above me. There's flashing lights." And then he said, "It's not an aircraft." And that's the last thing they heard.
Did he die?
And they heard, well, yeah, they heard some metal scratching sounds, and he died. He crashed.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it.
So they searched for him for 4 days. There were a bunch of, small craft pilots and the actual search parties, from the police and whatnot. And they couldn't find hide nor hair of this guy. And about 5 years later, a broken up plane was spotted on the surface of the ocean, like in probably where he was. It was probably his plane.
5 years later?
His body was never found.
5 years later. It was still floating?
Yeah, 5 years later. Yeah.
That seems unlikely.
And so they did an investigation. No, it was I said surface, didn't I? I said surface. It was the surface of the bottom that surface.
Seafloor?
The sandy surface.
Seafloor, perhaps?
So some people think that he didn't even go to that island. He was depressed. Did he commit suicide? Did he maybe want to start his life over, and so he pretended to die?
Mm-hmm. That's a plausible thought.
But some think he might have got disoriented, because there's this weird thing that happens when the sun goes down. The sun is setting, and parts of the horizon get dark, and so you think it's tilting, and so you tilt your plane to compensate, and you're actually tilting down, and you get into this thing called a graveyard spiral that you can't get out of, and your plane stalls, chokes or whatever,
stalls,
and they think that's what actually happened to him again.
But what's the explanation for the objects he was seeing?
But it wasn't, it could have been, I don't know, could have been all in his head. They also think he might have gotten so disoriented in this dusk and darkness that he was flying upside down, and the lights he saw that he thought was a UFO were actually his lights reflecting on the surface of the sea.
That would be creepy.
And he just flew right into it.
Well, I'm guessing that he has really bad vision.
Yeah. Could be.
Because, come on.
Yeah. But he's really cute. Fred, he was cute.
He was cute? That doesn't mean he isn't stupid.
And I'm sorry that he lost his life.
Well, I guess it was doing something he loves, though.
Yeah, that's true. Flying a little. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
All you subscribers out there, please give us a thumbs up, or, tell your friends about this exciting
give us like, rate us, and review us, and share.
Yeah, please review us.
We'd like a review.
It's only going to go uphill from here, right?
Up. And it's just uphill from here on out.
Let's say goodbye. I know you like having the last word, so.
That's on me. So good night, and bear with us.